The assumption is that an Amber Alert is automatically activated. The goal of the alert is to get the face of the child out to the public as quickly as possible and safely bring them back home. But there are some misconceptions about how the system works. It's the subject of tonight's Special Assignment Unit report.
If you have any information,
if they see this car, we are asking they just immediately call 911.
A man in the area recognized Cummins' vehicle from an Amber Alert.
The criteria required for Amber Alert is rarely met, which maintains the program as an effective tool in finding children who have been abducted and are in immediate danger. Well, the first thing I would say to Marcus Brown if he was sitting here is if there's no confirmed abduction, where the hell are my children?
It's an anger Troy Turner still carries nearly 3 years after receiving this letter from the Maryland State Police.
I mean, what I feel whenever I read that is just anger again.
The Maryland State Police Superintendent explains why the agency did not issue an Amber Alert for his missing son Jacob and daughter Sarah. And the outraged father flashes back to late September 2014 when he made a public plea.
If there's not people here who can work through that gray area, then I'm going to request that Governor O'Malley do it. I'm going to ask him to do it for me.
To do what he was not able to accomplish, get the state police to issue an Amber Alert to bring his missing children home.
A big part of the frustration was the confusion.
The mere disappearance of a child, maybe missing out of the backyard of a home, and only working on that description doesn't necessarily always meet the criteria for the Amber Alert program.
Robert Lowry with the Center for Missing and Exploited Children says that criteria is key to how the Amber Alert system works.
One has to be abduction of a child under the age of 18. Second is that child's life must be in imminent danger of physical injury or even death. And the third criteria is there has to be enough information to share with the public to aid in the recovery or the safe recovery of that child.
And information like a description of the abductor, the vehicle, and license plate number. Those are benchmarks that must meet strict Amber Alert guidelines. Turner was bewildered because he believed the vehicle that his children's mother, Catherine Hoggle, was in did meet the standard.
So if this is the criteria, it should have been issued immediately without me even having to ask for it.
But it didn't meet the guidelines because police had taken custody of the vehicle.
We know for certain those children aren't in that automobile, as an example of why an Amber Alert probably wasn't issued in that particular case.
The system is being oversold.
Timothy Griffin has co-authored several studies on the Amber Alert since 2003. The University of Nevada criminal justice professor examined nearly 2,000 Amber Alert cases. He calls the system crime control theater because his research shows it only has a 20% success rate.
In my view, the evidence is pretty overwhelming that the children rescued in these situations are not rescued from what you and I would consider to be life-threatening peril. In other words, Amber Alert is not really saving lives as we would hope. And that's what we mean by crime control theater. It's an attempt to make it look like we're doing something, even though I think the data are pretty clear that it's not really doing that much, at least in terms of saving lives.
The National Center says out of some 2,200 Amber Alerts, the program has safely recovered nearly 800 children since it began 20 years ago. It's a voluntary partnership between the local police, the media, state transportation departments, and mobile phone providers. Each state has its own coordinator who makes the final decision whether an Amber Alert is released.
We don't want to desensitize public because when we activate Amber, it's an emergent circumstance, and we're telling the public we need your help.
I'm not desensitized to a single one of those photos that shows up. Where do you draw the line and say this child doesn't deserve this tool and trying to be found?
We always look to make that system more efficient, even though it has had some critics. It's been one of the most successful programs that we know of when it comes to locating our most critically missing children.
The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children says if an abductor takes a child into another jurisdiction, it will make a request with those state coordinators to issue an Amber Alert too. NCMEC says the goal is to make sure they're putting out good information to the public to help aid in the recovery of the child.